Okay, so now we have our finished placemat. Now I didn't quilt my tiny version because I'm not really going to use it as a placemat, but now the next piece is we're going to take our skip cut blade and we're going to create perforations around the edge. The way that we're going to do this is like this. You're going to line up your ruler so that it's probably, you know, roughly about 1/8 of an inch, because it's going to be somewhere between the seam and the edge. I have these little notches on my ruler. I'm kind of going by those. I honestly don't know what the distance is. It doesn't really matter as long as you use the same distance all the way around. It will look just as good. Okay, so working with a skip cut blade is similar to any rotary cutting blade. You want to use all the same safety precautions. You want to use your dominant hand, hold the ruler in your non-dominant hand so you don't injure yourself. Here's the key difference, and I'll just put that aside while I tell you about it. We're not going to go all the way through with the skip cut blade. We're actually just going to be working between the seam lines. Okay, so think of this horizontal seam line as like a barrier, and this one is a barrier, and we're just creating skip cuts in between at some even distance from the seam and the edge of the fabric. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind with the skip cut blade, you're going through all 3 layers, right? Because you have your fabric, you have your batting, and you have your other fabric, and you also have some fabrics folded, so it's going to be kind of heavy layers. So you want to use a really firm pressure to make sure that the skip cuts are going through all the layers and not just the top layer. So I'm going to line up one of these little skips to the bottom of my seam here, and you can kind of hear it crunch down, and then from that crunch I'm going to work across to the top. Okay, and then I'm going to turn my piece and I'm going to repeat the same thing on all the 4 sides. Now I know you'll notice that this is not a perfect piece. First of all, I'm not a perfect quilter, that's just how I roll, but it's also a sample piece. But I want you to also feel that you don't have to be perfect either. This is your first try maybe doing crochet and quilting together, so try not to stress it too much. Again, I'm just using the tiny notch mark on mine, and again you want to start with hearing that crunch and then rolling evenly across, and then we'll do our final edge and I'll show you kind of what it looks like. Okay, put that away safely. Now you're going to come up here. I think it's usually almost impossible to see them, which is sort of frustrating on the video. But hopefully you can see these little lines, these sort of perforated lines. Those are our skip cuts, and we're going to use those to add our crochet border now.